after the last victory in the courtroom and further revelations, it is now clear that it is no longer just a local problem. For Andre Moore, the corruption he once thought would confine to a few crooked officials had revealed itself as something vast, global. It began with a satellite image on his screen, a private airstrip in Panama. The picture was grainy, but unmistakable. Multiple black SUVs lined the runway, and stepping off a private jet was none other than Judge Clarence Villano, recently retired from the U.S. Court of Appeals. Villano wasn't just a name from Andre's past. He was a judge who had suppressed key evidence in cartel-linked cases, including the one that nearly cost Andre his life. Now, the man was walking free, shielded by wealth and silence. This was no longer about legal missteps or personal vendettas. This was rotting the foundation of justice itself. 2 months after the fall of Monroe, Andre's path veered away from academia and media attention. He was recruited by a shadow network of whistleblowers and rogue analysts known only as the Athena Project, operating in complete secrecy. Their mission was to track judicial corruption tied to narco-financing and trafficking throughout the Americas. Andre had become more than a survivor of injustice. He was now the tip of the spear in a hidden war. Panama City was the first front line. At 4:17 a.m., cloaked in darkness and sweat, Andre tracked Carlos Mendez, the man suspected of laundering money for Villano, through alleys and shadows. He wasn't alone, working under diplomatic immunity through a UN legal unit. Kara guided him remotely. The intel led to a heavily guarded vault building, rumored to house every offshore transaction, every shell case, and every judge who'd been bought. But the plan wasn't just about infiltration. It was about legacy. Andre was retracing the footsteps of his father, Marcus Moore, a man who, in 2006, had already uncovered the operation, only to vanish after a failed sting. Marcus had seen Villano hand off a briefcase to Mendez in that very alley, and he'd paid the price for it. Now, Andre carried a replica of that same briefcase. Inside was a GPS scrambler and a silent drone. Andre used the device to bypass security, reaching the vault undetected. Inside, he discovered files more damning than he could have imagined. Passport scans, evidence of judicial swaps, and rigged court decisions. One file stopped him cold, Operation Phoenix. It detailed court-ordered relocations of children under the guise of custody rulings. Andre's name was in it, so was Kara's and Marcus's. Before he could process it all, chaos erupted. An explosion shook the building. Sirens blared. Gunfire rang out. Kara shouted in his earpiece, urging him to flee. But as Andre ran, a figure blocked his path. Mendez, armed and calm. He taunted Andre with memories of Marcus, insisting his father had died for nothing. Andre's only response was action. He lunged. Minutes later, bleeding and breathless, Andre escaped with a Phoenix file. Kara pulled him into a getaway car, and they vanished into the jungle. Inside the file, amidst account ledgers and encrypted data, was a note, a single sheet handwritten, detailing the true horror. Children weren't just being hidden. They were being moved through legal systems, disguised as paperwork, sealed in rulings no one ever read. It went all the way up. Supreme Court, UN delegates, names that weren't supposed to be in files like these. A week later, a bombshell press release hit the web. The cartel inside the court was no longer a rumor. The files were real. The names were real. And the resistance had begun. But as the truth spread, so did a warning. A second, anonymous message surfaced. It told Andre he had missed something. The real architect was in the files. He was in Andre's past. On the Phoenix ledger, under the founder's initials, the name MM didn't stand for Marcus Moore. It stood for Marshall Monroe, Clay's older brother, a former CIA logistics officer presumed dead since 2011. But Monroe wasn't dead. He was alive, watching, controlling everything. From a hidden location, Monroe monitored Andre's every move, his interviews, Kara's testimony at The Hague. And then he made his next move, a VHS tape, aged and labeled with eerie clarity. 1994, Howard Dorm fire covered, was delivered to Andre. That fire had haunted Andre's father for decades. It was also the same year Kara's sister, Imani, had died in a so-called accident during a protest. The tape showed the truth. A figure pouring accelerant. A clipboard marked with one name, M. Monroe. Marshall hadn't just built the cartel. He lit its first match. Kara, heartbroken, joined Andre on a call to process the news. Before they could recover, a new voice interrupted them, a robotic, encrypted tone. It called itself Iskra, a former NSA operative who had worked under Monroe before defecting. She revealed that the cartel's network wasn't just legal. It was military, intelligence, judicial, and the real archive, it wasn't digital. It was encoded into Marcus Moore's body. Specifically, a scar carved into his shoulder during a 2009 interrogation. 3 letters, L7X. Andre found the truth buried in an autopsy envelope Kara smuggled to him. The letters weren't just a scar. They were a login string. 12 hours later, in the icy winds of Klaxvik in the Faroe Islands, Andre, Kara, and Iskra's team broke into a decommissioned NATO listening post. Inside, they entered the code L7X/origins. The vault opened. It was the heart of Monroe's empire. Voice recordings, bribe ledgers, secret trials, and more. The most chilling folder was labeled Judicial Deep Mine. One document named 2 sitting U.S. Supreme Court justices. Another tied a UN delegate to cartel payoffs. Kara could barely breathe. Andre was already preparing to release it all, but Monroe was prepared. Through the compound intercom, his voice crackled. Calm, condescending. He revealed one final truth. The real archive wasn't in the vault. It was inside Andre's memories. Memories Marcus had locked away through trauma and repetition. A tattoo, a sermon, a final location. Then came the ambush. The compound exploded beneath them. Andre woke up later, adrift on a boat. Kara was gone. Iskra, barely holding on to signal, warned him. Monroe had activated Protocol Tantalus. Within 48 hours, every person connected to the leak would be erased. Kara had been taken, and Monroe was offering a trade, the original hard drive for her life. But Andre knew where the real drive was hidden, beneath the pulpit of a Baltimore church. The same church where his father had once preached. It had been there all along, back in Monroe's war room. Surrounded by clocks tied to corrupt courts across the world, the architect prepared his final act. Kara, tied and bruised, appeared on one screen. Andre's name flashed across another. Monroe issued a global order. Andre Moore was now a terrorist, and within 72 hours, his face would be on every screen. But this wasn't over. Andre hadn't just uncovered the truth. He had become the key to taking it all down. The system was built on silence, murder, and memory. Now, he would use every weapon left to destroy it, because they weren't just fighting for justice anymore. They were fighting for survival, to be continued.
Next up, Fire Protocol Tantalus, the cartel inside the court. The part 4 of The Real Killer was closer than anyone thought true crime series. They tried to erase the evidence. Now Andre will erase the architect, one name at a time.